What's going on YouTube? Guy in the backseat here from Doomguy Games here going over a new little segment that I'm doing that's just basically Konami trying to fix its mistakes. Um, I'm mentioning a few cards here from a what everybody views as a completely dead archetype. Not necessarily these cards in particular, I'm just showing the playable ones that people might recognize, but the archetype was Arcana Force. Arcana Force cards were developed in Light of Destruction. They were created right after, or right before Duelist Genesis happened. So right before the Synchro era entered into our, mainstream gameplay. Now, the Arcana Force cards all consisted of the Tarot deck. Tarot deck is a deck of cards that utilizes 21 or 22 extra cards from a standard playing card deck, and it's known as the Major Arcana, which the Arcana is basically used to predict fortunes. Um, they range from 0 to 21, 0 here being Arcana Force the Fool, and finally Arcana Force 21, the World. Um, it was a very interesting deck type, but due to its lack of having the anime exclusive cards converted to playable cards in the TCG, the deck didn't have as much, outright power as it had in the anime. Now, you still did have some killer cards like the World, which is the only card to this day that states you skip your opponent's next turn if you fulfill its condition. Now, granted, this relied on you getting lucky on a coin flip and tributing 2 monsters you controlled during your turn, um, during the end phase of the turn. So just saying, but having 3100 body plus, skipping an opponent's turn, that can just set them, I mean, it literally is the only way to set back an opponent a full turn with no consequence. But nowadays Valor exists, so you'd laugh at this. Anyway, but the effect does resolve at the end phase, so you couldn't even Valor, but you could Valor it prior to, I'm assuming. I don't know how that would work, but either way. The only two cards that are the only couple of cards that I've actually seen played in regular games are Arcana Force the Fool and Arcana Force, Light Ruler and Dark Ruler in certain games where my opponent has several creatures on the board and they're willing to give it up for a 4K beater that has a chance at one of two awesome effects. So, point is, the deck type is pretty much done. They aren't planning on releasing any of the support to my knowledge unless they totally surprise us with it. And they have moved on to bigger, better things. And the bigger, better things that I'd like to bring up are the newest and, in my opinion, one of the most consistent, crazy, holy crap deck types in the game, Prophecies. Prophecies by themselves would not be as good as they would be as like other decks if these spellbooks did not exist. The spellbooks give the deck so much search power, it's almost retarded. I've seen Prophecy players go off on Dev Pro, Yugi Pro, whatever it is, where I mean, like I built a deck and I literally got to add 7 cards to my hand at the end phase with New Judgment and just all the searching that happened in between. So much just deck thinning. I see Exodia deck potential. I see so many ideas that could come from this deck. And just like, I mean, you have search, you have power boost plus potential search, you have, protection for your monsters, you have banishment setting or returning. Like Fate is ridiculous. It can just it's so versatile. It's nutty. And you have Eternity just to get back the cards from Fate and then reactivate them, which most of the time you banished a secret, so you're getting back a search card. And I mean, and then Master, which just duplicates anything in the grave that's a normal spell. I mean, that's dumb. You can activate Spellbook of Power, target a monster, give it 1,000 more attack, get a search. If you kill something, and activate Master, and resolve the same effect, which means that you get 2 searches if your monster kills, and that's plussing, isn't it? The point is that the deck itself has so much searching potential just in the spell cards that you can actually splice this into any deck, not counting exclusively, the Prophecy monsters. I mean, you do have the full range too. Unlike the Arcana Force, which started with the Fool, got a few cards like Emperor and Empress and Magician and some other ones, but they missed out on their Hanged Man, and which we got a Stoic and other cards in particular, like stuff like the Tower and the Devil and all these other cards. So Konami decided, well, if we're going to make the deck, we might as well make it right. So they fixed the problem that they had with Arcana Force. They gave the deck tons of support. They gave the deck a fair and balanced, capable way of being played, as opposed to a completely chance-based way of playing, which would make more sense in a, Prophecy or Tarot deck. But, you know, I'm going to be biased and say I like that they made the deck balanced and where it's not totally broken and not totally fair at the same time. It's like it's right there in the middle where if it goes off, it goes off. If it doesn't go off, it loses hard. And I've had that same experience. You open up with so many boss monsters sometimes. I mean, I almost want to put Magical Mallet in this deck, but I mean, with added support cards like Fool of Prophecy, Magician of Prophecy being an exact duplicate of this card, and being able to just search upon search and summon this, search, activate, 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 set fate, and turn, opponent goes, you play defense, offense, or, complete, control with fate, where your opponent declares an attack, you just flip down your Magician and get another search, or they summon a big boss that you don't want to deal with, just banish it, or, just they set two back row, you bounce one of them, and it happens to be their Starlight Road. Lots of potential with this deck. I mean, and then you have High Priestess, obviously the big boss monster, the crazy expensive card right now, Dark Magician's twin sister, or whatever the crap she is, but she just has the ability to get rid of things that are going to be problems, and just like when she first was released, she says banish a spellbook. You're like, man, I don't want to get rid of my secrets, but now you do because Eternity exists, and you can just put it back in your hand. And there's almost a virtual loop with her and Eternity, and Strength just does shenanigans, putting stuff back in the deck that you want to search out again. I mean, you have Wheel. Now this card, mind you, I'm doing most of these monster reviews in order of their actual Tarot deck slot, because the Wheel, I think, is number 10. And Wheel of Prophecy just makes the whole deck on a different tier, a different like caliber of how you can play it, and just the shenanigans and capability that it can pull out of out of nowhere. It's insane, because I mean, you can banish, a card a turn with you can put stuff in the grave with Fool, banish a card a turn with High Priestess to blow up things, utilize Fate to the highest potential, where you're getting rid of things constantly, and now you all of a sudden you don't have anything to search for left in your deck, and then all of a sudden, just out of nowhere, you have Wheel hit the table, and your opponent says, wait, what just happened? Because everything is back in your deck or in your graveyard. It's a reset button, and a 2700 beater at that. I mean, and furthermore, it's just so many potential things. Justice is search power on a monster. When I first read her, I said they can't give him a +1. That's impossible, and they did, because you're plussing off your normal card plays. You're getting a card. You're basically one for oneing the whole time, but you're getting an extra card out of your deck. I mean, Pot of Greed is banned because it gives you 2 cards for 1, and it's any 2 cards. This lets you specifically search. Is that better or worse? I mean, you have tutoring and searching out of your monsters and your spells. You have Stoic, which searches monsters like Justice to give you the play next turn. And you also have stuff like Reaper that just summons things out of your deck and can potentially search and be a 2600 body and be a possible material for Bouncer. I mean, lots of crazy things can happen with this deck. And I mean, Temperance just auto summons out of the deck things that you don't want to deal with. I mean, I have turns where I just goof off with my opponent and I'll summon Destroyer out of my deck. And Destroyer, while he doesn't seem that big of a threat because he has no special tricks like all the other ones, except that he's virtually invincible. And remember, Wheel is a card now. I mean, I see Wheel and Destroyer being best friends. It's insane how cool this deck can be. But Konami did not just drop off the edge. They said, we don't have to make each one of these spells or each one of these cards a monster. We can make spells that represent the tarot deck as well. The tower does exist in the tarot deck, and the tower, the Grand Spellbook Tower, is defined by so many players as one of the best support cards in the game. Your opponent is not encouraged to destroy it. Your opponent does not want to destroy this because you're going to get a summon out of it. Virtually any monster out of your deck that you want. And don't forget, we got Reaper now, and Reaper will just put back everything because it'll summon out Wheel now. Or it'll summon out Destroyer, or it'll summon out, any other choice that you want out of your deck. That's at least a dark spellcaster. But Tower is insane because it gives you draw support every single turn. And the Spellbook Star Hall, a lot of players aren't playing this as well, but I mean, still, once again, this special summons from the deck. This searches your deck for monsters, and it gives your monsters bonuses that your opponent isn't expecting. Not to mention, you play one spellbook after this card's activated, you can search a Veiler if your opponent heavy storms or MSTs it away. And searching Veiler, I have no problem with that. I'll do that all day. The final card that needs to be discussed is Divine Judgment of the Spellbooks, a card that obviously needs its own review all in of itself. But the fact that the card exists is one of those factors that players will not fully grasp until it is utilized against them. Now, I have been testing the card on DevPro, but the problem that I'm seeing with it is that it gives you so much hand control where you're getting so many cards that you actually end up discarding your parts of your hand at the end of phase, which isn't necessarily the worst thing, but it's also not the best thing. Unless you're playing multiple destroyers or at least one, you're not going to really get the best utilization out of the card, because if you can put Destroyer in the grave, you can summon it the next turn and have a good advantage. Now, mind you, Divine Judgment has been ridiculously nerfed from its initial statement, but it's still that good. Playing it on the first turn, chaining it to the standby phase where your opponent doesn't have a way to respond to it outside of a Herald at the green light or potentially a magic drain that they set on their previous turn or a Solemn. I mean, the fact that this spell card can bait out a Solemn and does nothing until the end phase of that turn is the reason why this deck is going to have a bit of a threat, at least towards the meta. Now, the only problem that I'm seeing is that the deck, once again, has a very big problem with just bad hands. It can open terrible and it can open amazing. And if a player can't play properly, they're going to fail with it. And they can be given all the support, all the crazy plays, and all the best cards in the game. But if you can't utilize your hand in the right way, you will lose. Now, there's only one card missing from the actual tarot set, and that's the World himself, or herself, or whatever the crap it is. For all I know, it could be a rank 8 Exceed. For all I know, it could be another spell. It could be a trap card for all we know, but that would be totally out of left field and totally not related to how Konami does business. They like to keep archetypes in one solid style. So, honestly, what do you guys think? Do you think Prophecies are going to actually have a chance come Lord of the Tachyon Galaxy when we get 2 more pieces of the tarot deck and where your opponent is going to see this card hit the table in the standby phase and cry because they don't have a way to respond to it? Let me know. I mean, honestly, I think that the tarot deck has finally seen a real recreation, a real like positive influence on the game, because once again, players that aren't skillful enough can't utilize this deck to its greatest potential. But sadly, a lot of players think that they can, and when they misplay with it, they get upset. And that's not on us, that's on the player. So I have to say, hopefully that this deck will eventually topple YCS, eventually get some more respect, and hopefully, people are able to utilize it in the best way possible. Now, if that means an Exodia deck, then so be it. Anyway, guy in the back seat, as always, comment, rate, subscribe. Have a nice evening.